Now, our top story this half an hour, the Russian election probe heating up in the House. Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, met with a House panel probing how Russia's interference in the 2016 election earlier this week occurred. One focus of the investigation, the hacking of Podesta's own personal email account and the release of his emails by WikiLeaks during the campaign. In recent days, President Trump has accused former President Obama of doing too little to address Russian cyber activity while he was still in the White House. Joining me right now is the former chairman of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, John Podesta. John, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Good to have you on the program.
Good morning, Maria.
So you met with the Senate Intelligence Panel as part of this investigation. What can you tell us? House Intelligence. What can you tell us about that meeting?
Well, they wanted to know essentially what had happened to me and what the effect of was on the campaign, the Russian interference in our democratic process, and they're probing what actually happened, whether there was collusion, and what are we going to do about it. They asked me not to get into specific questions that they asked me and my specific answers, but in general terms, they're taking a bipartisan look at this stage. You know, they had trouble in that committee when their chairman, Devin Nunes, was kind of working with the White House to try to both cover sort of for whatever had happened in the Trump White House and the Trump campaign, and particularly the Mike Flynn matter. But I think they're back on track with a bipartisan investigation. So there are members from both sides, and they asked probing questions about what had happened during the campaign.
Do you find it odd that there's been so much attention on the Trump campaign and the Trump associates and potential collusion with Russians when, in fact, it's really the Democrats who have deeper and stronger ties to Russia? I mean, John, I've got to ask you about your own situation, your ties to Russian entities. You joined the board of a small energy company in 2011. 2 months later, a Russian entity directly funded by the Kremlin invested $35 million in the company. You were given 75,000 shares in a Russian company, which you failed to disclose when you became an Obama associate.
Maria, that's not true. I fully disclosed and was completely compliant with. And by the way, I divested before I went into the White House.
But where did you divest it, John? A lot of people feel like you divested it to your adult children.
I divested it consistent with the advice that I was given by the White House counsel's office, and I was fully compliant and fully transparent about what I had done. And so the fact that you're picking through my emails that were stolen by the Russians and released by WikiLeaks, and creating a story which is not true is. Something that we have to deal with. So you weren't given 75,000 shares of stock in a Russian company? You were not given 75,000 shares? I didn't have any stock in any Russian company. So go back and get your facts straight, Maria. But
That's not true, John. We know that you own 75,000 shares. You're on the board of Joe.
It's not a Russian company. They own less than 5%.
It's backed by the Kremlin.
I didn't own any shares in that company, Maria.
When you stepped off the board, you were given 75,000 shares from Joe Lee.
That is not true.
How many shares were you given, John?
Maria, I didn't have any shares in any Russian company. I was on the board of an American company that did business here and only here. The Russian company had a small investment in that company. And we can go around and around the tree.
It's widely reported that it's backed by the Kremlin. It's been widely reported that that company's been backed by the Kremlin, and they gave you 75,000 shares that you had to disclose
when you
went into the Obama administration.
Maria, you can keep leveling this charge. It is not true.
Okay.
They didn't give me anything. They had a small investment in a company I was on the board of. It was a clean energy company that was trying to deal with the issue of trying to produce energy, liquid fuel, from a biotechnology process. It was based in Boston. The Russian company had a very small investment in it. And you could keep saying that they gave me stock, but they didn't.
I'm just following all the widely reported information here, John.
Well,
There's also Hillary Clinton, obviously.
Maybe you're looking at widely reported information from InfoWars.
No, I'm not.
But it is not
No, I'm not.
true.
This is Politico. This is the New York Times. This is the Wall Street Journal.
No, it's
That's
not.
what I'm looking at, John.
No, it's not,
Then
Maria.
there's Hillary Clinton. Then there's Hillary Clinton, of course, we know, who got $100 million from Russian companies after she allowed that Russian company to acquire 20% of the U.S.'s uranium. So the point I'm making here, John, is that there's much deeper ties to Russia on the Democratic side than there are on the Republican side. And it's just a head scratcher that this has been taking all the oxygen out of the room over Trump, when in fact it's been your team that has been in bed with the Russians.
You know, Fox can do whatever it wants to do on this matter. The truth is that Vladimir Putin, at his direction, according to 17 U.S. intelligence agencies, interfered with the U.S. election to help elect Donald Trump. Why was that? That was because Donald Trump had adopted Vladimir Putin's foreign policy, lock, stock, and barrel. He was out on the campaign trail saying that NATO was obsolete. He was trying to make excuses for their intervention in Ukraine. He was talking about eliminating sanctions on Russia because of their intervention and their takeover of Crimea. And so, you could blow a lot of smoke, Maria, but the truth is Vladimir Putin interfered in the U.S. election, and I'm surprised you're not concerned about that the Russians would hack whether it's Republicans or Democrats, that they would hack into commit crimes in the United States and then work with WikiLeaks to damage our campaign.
I am concerned
I'm glad
about
to hear that.
But I know
it doesn't
that
sound like it this morning.
But I know that Russia meddling goes back decades. And I know that when we go to Russia, when Condi Rice used to go to Russia, they would put her in the same exact hotel room in the same place every year when she would go there so that they could spy on her. The same thing happens in China. And I know that the U.S. does the same thing. So this is not a new story. But the whole idea that there was any collusion with Trump that's where the narrative and the charade is, because everybody knows Russia's trying to undermine the U.S., has been for years. That's not a new story. The story that the Democrats have been riding and this Trump collusion is simply not true, and we have no evidence of it.
Well, look, I mean, you're talking to the wrong guy. You should be talking to his people about whether they colluded. Mike Flynn was the national was his national security advisor. He had to leave because he lied about his contacts with the Russians within a month of the campaign. When Sally Yates, the acting attorney general, told the White House counsel that Mr. Flynn had been compromised, they did exactly nothing until the Washington Post broke the story. So there's a lot to investigate here, and I'm glad that the House Intelligence Committee has gotten back on track with a bipartisan investigation. Senate Intelligence Committee is doing the same thing. Mr. Mueller's doing the same thing. We'll see where it all ends.
Do you think they are going to focus on the Democratic involvement with the Russians as well? Were you asked about any of these things from the House Intelligence Committee this week?
I have already told you that I was asked not to talk about specific questions, and I said I would respect that. Okay. But in general terms, I think they're looking at everything. Yeah. So hopefully they, I absolutely have nothing to hide. And I think the facts that you stated at the beginning of this program are wrong. And I think if you go back and check them, you'll find that I'm
checking
right.
them over and over, John, and it's not wrong. We know that you were given shares in a company that was backed by the Kremlin. You may say it's a company based in Boston, but it was backed by the Kremlin. That's been widely reported, John.
Maria, less than 5% of that company was owned was an investment by the Russian company. It was not a backed.
Why did you go on the board? Why was that company so attractive to you?
Because, I've been a longtime activist on clean energy and on trying to deal with the climate challenge. And this was a promising company. The fact that the price of oil has been down so long has made the entries into that space very, very difficult.
John,
but it was what they were trying to do was to produce liquid fuel from carbon dioxide and from the sun through a biotechnology process.
John,
it was a extremely promising high-tech company in the United States.
There's a real question about what the response from the DNC was when your emails were hacked. I mean, look, obviously your emails were hacked. The DNC emails were hacked. It was a huge deal during the campaign, and it may very well have swayed people in terms of the election. Now, Congressman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina is asking why a decision was made not to turn over the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's email server to law enforcement or intelligence agencies. When you got hacked, why wasn't the DNC got hacked? Why wasn't the DNC server passed over? Why wasn't it given to law enforcement and the intelligence agencies? Did you not want government agencies to investigate this?
Look, the Hillary Clinton servers were turned over to the agencies. With respect to the DNC, I wasn't involved with that. I was the chair of Hillary's campaign. That was a matter for the DNC. I don't know the circumstance of whether they were asked for them or whether they said yes or no. But I think that if anything, it looks like the FBI was fairly casual, maybe is a kind word, about the fact that they were what they knew, how much they were investigating. They were lackadaisical in their approach to the DNC. So I think you have to look at the whole picture. And it seems like, if anything, it's on the FBI that didn't come forward and really inform the DNC about what was going on until long after essentially the horse was out of the barn door.
Why? I mean, is the FBI just politicized, John? Was that what it was?
Know.
I mean, okay.
I have no idea.
Let me move past this issue, John, because in the past week, in the wake of the Republican special election victories, some House Democrats have suggested that Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi step down. They're calling into question her leadership, the party's agenda, even the Democratic brand. Do you think Nancy Pelosi should step down?
Look, I think Nancy Pelosi's been an effective leader of the Democrats in the House. If you look at who's having a bad week, it's Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. They can't seem to get past their impasse on health care. So I think that, Nancy Pelosi has been an effective leader, and she will be the leader as long as she wants to be the leader. And, at some point, the torch is going to pass. But I think at this point, she's been an effective person who has brought her caucus together, first in the majority and now in the minority.
Yeah, but do you think that the messaging needs to change? And how do you change messaging with the Democratic Party when you have the same leader in place? I mean, John, let's face it. You were Bill Clinton's chief of staff. President Clinton was in the middle. He leaned to the left, but he was a moderate. Your party, in many regards, has been hijacked by the extreme left, by Elizabeth Warren, by Barack Obama, by others. Do you think you need to change that in order to win again?
Look, that will be on the ballot in 2018, but I think most importantly in the next presidential race. And I'm sure there's going to be a competitive primary. I bet you there are 15 or 20 people who at least think about or, dive into running, and the party will decide which direction it's going by the presidential candidate they pick, not by the majority leader of the House of Representatives.
Do you believe that's why Hillary Clinton lost? There wasn't enough messaging in terms of the issues that America cares about, like jobs?
Look, I think we had a strong economic program that we put forward, but it was hard to get. The sun was sort of blocked out by the debate we were having with Donald Trump on his antics and his issues.
John, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for answering the important questions America cares about.
All right, Maria.
John Podesta. We'll be right back.
More than 70% of Americans